Welcome to the She Hit Refresh podcast. Today I'm excited because we have actually one of my lounge members here as a guest, and her name is Alyssa. So Alyssa is an American writer and educator with a very low tolerance for comfort zones. 10 years ago, she took the leap of a lifetime, moving from Boston to Switzerland. And now she lives in Scotland. Very cool. Alyssa has been a finalist for the BBC's Scottish Voices Talent Development Program, and her unpublished novel was longlisted for Helen Lederer's Comedy Women in Print Prize. In her free time, she can be found dancing badly, in her own words, doing improv, and hanging out in bookstores. She loves being an advocate for other solo women looking to take their leap into life abroad. Welcome, Alyssa.
Hi, Steffi. Thanks for having me.
So excited to have you on. You have such an incredible story. And we know that you're living abroad, and we'll get into that. But before we do, can you just tell us a little bit about you and your life before you moved?
I was born and raised in the Boston area. I had never lived more than 30 or 40 minutes away from home. I went to school in Boston. I went to grad school in Boston. After I graduated, I got a job teaching in the Boston area, and everything I knew, everything I loved was in Eastern Massachusetts. I'd done a little bit of traveling when I was in college. I always thought it was something that I was going to get back to someday, but life kind of got in the way. I had a career trajectory. I had a home. I was in a real serious relationship. And I had this feeling that traveling and living abroad was maybe for younger people, and this was what adults do. They settle down, they accept maybe a job that's not quite the right fit, and they just sort of get on with life. And then suddenly, all of that changed.
You moved abroad around the same time I did, which was about 9-10 years ago. So we were in our mid-30s.
Yep.
And back then, remote work wasn't really a thing. And like moving abroad to work wasn't, just as common. And so you kind of think you just have to adult and get on with it, right? Get that 9 to 5 or get your job and kind of live the Groundhog Days. That's what people do. That's
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's a great way to describe it.
What prompted your interest then in moving abroad? Or like, how did you even know that it was a possibility for you after you had kind of just done the thing that everybody does for so long?
So I actually had this wonderful friend come into my life who was also an educator, and she ended up working in the same office in the same school that I worked in, but she'd just come off a stint of 8 years teaching in Asia, living in Shanghai, living in Beijing, and she came with these wonderful stories about what it was like to be a teacher there, traveling, life in China, and I thought to myself, oh, that sounds like the kind of life that I want. That sounds so exciting and so interesting. And I've never known anybody who's done this, but it's so cool that I know someone who's done this and has this wonderful career. And so life kind of moved on a little bit for another year or two. My friend actually got another teaching assignment in Cambodia, and off she went, and I stayed in Boston. And a couple of different things happened at the same time. First of all, my job really wasn't working out the way I wanted it to work. It was a really toxic, stressful environment, and I was really reaching my wits end with that. And around the same time, I had a very serious relationship end. And all of a sudden, my life was a blank canvas. Nothing was keeping me in Boston anymore. I wasn't in a relationship. I didn't own a home. My job was really not something that I felt like I wanted to hang on to anymore. And I just had this revelation where I realized now was the time. It was time for me to start teaching abroad. So that was what prompted all of it.
Love it. Okay. And then that's great that you had sort of a model for someone who had done that. They had information, and I guess they helped you understand where you could figure out how to do this for yourself then, right? I guess if you could let us know a little bit of like, how did you know where to look to even find a job that would take you abroad?
So my friend suggested that I sign up for Search Associates, which is one of the largest and most reputable international teaching recruitment organizations in the whole world. It's not a matchmaking service. They don't match you up with jobs. They don't place you at a school. What it is this huge database. They've got schools, I think, in 120 different countries, and then thousands of different teachers. They take all of your references, they take your CV, you apply to be a part of this space, and when they accept you, you are then part of this database of international teachers, and you can see all the schools that come up and have listings. So you are pre-vetted. They do a background check just to make sure that you are who you say you are. And then suddenly you have access to all of these job listings. So I was able to do that. And at the time, the best way to get a job internationally through search was to go to an in-person job fair. And they just happened to be having one in Boston the year that I was looking for a job. And initially I remember being so nervous about even just going to the fair because it involved me asking a day off from work from my current job. And my employer was really supportive. I think they knew that I was ready for a change as well. And I ended up going, and it's just such an incredible high going to these fairs because you get to meet schools from all over the world. So you might go in thinking that you've got a really clear idea of where you want to be, and then you meet someone from another country that totally blows your mind, and suddenly you're thinking about going there. I sort of liken it to a Regency ball. You go into a ballroom, all the schools are there, you get a chance to chat with them and give them your resume, and from there you are going into interviews and signing up for jobs. So it's a really incredible experience. I interviewed for a bunch of different jobs and I got 2 job offers. One was in Shanghai and one was in Switzerland. And the job in Switzerland just seemed like a better fit for me. So that's the one I ended up accepting.
Oh my gosh, that's life-changing. Like
It was.
living in Boston forever, thinking your life's going to be in Boston,
Yep.
and now you're like, wow, I'm going to Switzerland.
Exactly.
So I definitely want to talk about that, but I'm just thinking now, probably for the educators that are listening, they're probably really interested in what you teach, what age range you're teaching.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I am a drama teacher, and right now I teach middle and high school, but Search Associates is for anybody who teaches K-12 education. It's for certified educators, so it's not a place for people who just kind of want to give teaching a try or think they might want to teach like on the side and travel around the world. It's for certified credentialed experienced educators, and really it's for any subject. So you are not teaching English as a second language unless that's your specialty area. You can teach math, you can teach science, you can teach English, history, drama, phys ed, art, any subject you would find at a regular school. They have it at international schools, and they're looking for teachers every single year to fill these positions.
Fabulous. So this conference that you went to, those are happening every year and people can go to those.
Yes, they happen every year. You do need to be an active member of Search Associates to access those conferences. So you have to apply like I did and be vetted. And that involves getting some references from former employers, uploading a CV, maybe answering some questions about your background and your history. So there's a pre-vetting process. And once you make it through that pre-vetting process, that then gives you access to all the fairs.
Fabulous. Okay, so you're off to Switzerland. So how old were you at the time when you went?
I was 34.
Great. Oh my gosh. And that was, what year was that?
It was 2014.
Oh my gosh. Hey, time flies, girl.
Yeah.
Time flies. All right. And then, so what did your friends and family think, and your coworkers, everyone think of you making this radical life change at 34, which, I mean, we're around the same age now. It's been about 10 years. Now 34 feels and sounds so young, but when
Yes.
you were 34, you're like, I need to have my life together. I should be settled down. Everyone around me. That's what a lot of people tend to think. So what did your community and people around you think?
Lots of different reactions. Most of my family has like never left the Boston area. So I think for my parents, it was a really hard revelation. I think they knew that I was really ready for something different. So they resolved to be supportive, but that was tough. I really don't think any parent wants to get a call from their kid saying, hey, I'm moving to another continent where I don't know anybody. So that was tough, but they really rallied and supported me. Friends, the same. It was sad to leave my friends. It was really sad and it was tough. But people were also unbelievably supported, unbelievably interested in what I was doing. And some people, I think, kind of wanted to like sort of metaphorically like come along on the ride with me and hear about my adventures and hear about all the stuff I had planned. So I felt very loved and supportive. I even had a student at one point tell me that they were proud of me. And it was just so sweet. They were like, Miss, you've shown us that we can do anything and we should go for our dreams. And I was like, yes, that's exactly what I want you to take away from this. So I felt unbelievably loved and supported, even when people maybe didn't quite understand why I was doing what I was doing.
Love that. All right. That's so great when I hear from women who have people who really support them, because I know not everybody has that. For a lot of people out there, I think they feel like if they share this dream or idea with their friends or family that there's going to be a lot of pushback, concern, questions. Are you crazy? Aren't you too old for this? All that kind of stuff.
I mean, I got all of that. I got all of that. And I just want to say to anybody listening that if you wait for all of your loved ones to get on board with your dream of moving abroad, you will wait forever. Sometimes the most important thing for your loved ones is to know that you are happy, healthy, and safe. And then you go off and you live your life and you show them that this was the right choice for you. And once they see that, you're living your life, you're doing well, they back off a little bit on the criticism. But if you wait until everybody feels good, like it's not a committee decision. It's not a team choice. You're over 30, you're an adult. I would say, don't wait, but maybe address those concerns and say, well, yes, actually I have thought of this. I have thought of that. Maybe have some answers prepared if you've got someone in your life who's really worried about you.
That is sound advice. Yes, because I tell people, I think our loved ones don't mean harm when they maybe don't agree with our decision. For most people, they're just projecting their fears on you.
Absolutely.
Right? Their dream isn't to move abroad, so it sounds so wild and crazy and far-fetched to do that. And they're thinking of all of the things that could go wrong, or they're just feeling their own fears and bringing up those fears and concerns to you. But you have research, you have plan, like Alyssa said, just have some information, facts, all the information that you have that's showing, that you're making a decision based on facts and not just feelings.
Absolutely.
All right, fabulous. So let's take it to Switzerland. So now you got your job offer, you're in Switzerland. Can you tell us about that transition of moving abroad for the first time, what it was like to live in Switzerland, where in Switzerland you were?
Sure. Moving abroad for the first time was the most challenging thing I have ever done in my entire life. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There was all the emotional aspects of shutting down my life in Boston, which involved giving away lots of my stuff, selling lots of my stuff, saying goodbye to people, leaving the flat that I lived in and knowing that I no longer had a flat in the city that I'd lived in for 15 years. So that was very emotional and difficult. Everything went into 2 suitcases. I showed up in Switzerland and a representative of my school picked me up at the airport. And this representative really didn't even speak much English, and I didn't speak any German at the time. And I just had this feeling as I was in the van and they were bringing me to my first flat, what have I done? And the first few months were incredibly challenging. I lived just outside of Zurich in a very small village. So my life was totally different than the way it was in Boston. There were sheep and cows outside of my door. I lived overlooking a farm. There were roosters crowing and waking me up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And then when I went to do basic things like grocery shopping, I didn't even know what I was buying. I think the first time I went to buy groceries, I think it took me an hour and a half just to get through this small store because I kept Google translating everything to understand what I was buying. And then there was the whole challenge of not just getting my feet under me with my job, but making friends. Figuring out who am I? How do I fit into this community? What am I going to do for a social life? Dating? All of these things really took up a ton of my energy the first year that I was there.
Definitely. It is a complete life change. And I definitely don't want to sugarcoat things on this podcast because I think especially in the last few months, I have seen so many move abroad gurus out there and they're selling it move abroad in 90 days and it's so easy. It's not. I just want to keep it real that a move abroad is actually very hard. Yes, the steps are simple in the terms get a visa, get the job, move. But in terms of what it actually takes and the experience itself, it is very challenging. And I guess why would it not be? You're starting your life over in a completely new environment. And
exactly. So, I think I had this revelation too. I wrote this blog post, this is not your semester abroad, because I really thought that it was going to be just like studying abroad, and it is not. It is not like that at all. And if I see one more post where it's a latte and a cafe and it's this is your life if you move abroad, you're just going to be sipping a latte and watching the world go by. It's no, people have jobs and, you have to communicate, open your bank account, get your cell phone contract, get your utility set up. Doing all of those things is a lot of work. It's hard. And you're going to have moments where you're sitting on the cobblestone cafe and drinking your latte and you're I can't believe this is my life. But you're also going to have moments I had this moment my first, I think, 2 weeks living in Switzerland where I had to do laundry, and I could not figure out how to use the shared laundry in my flat block. The console with the buttons looked totally different than anything I'd ever seen in my life. And I was like Googling it. I was, making Facebook posts, crying because I couldn't do laundry and I needed clean socks to go to work the next day. So you're going to have incredible highs and incredible lows, and it's just all part of the experience.
Yes, exactly. I like to say it's an emotional roller coaster. I mean, that it's that before you go, and then it continues after you go. And I mean, it's life. It's life. Yeah. Yes, it's different because you're in a different country. And I think there is, of course, a childlike wonder that comes with that, experiencing life in a novel way every day. Yeah. But still it's life. You're still going to face challenges. And I love that you mentioned, about going to the grocery store, making friends, which takes a lot of work, especially as an adult. Dating, all of those things are, wonderful, but also there's challenges with that too.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning that. Just really briefly for the educators out there, because they might be curious, what are some of the differences in teaching in Switzerland that you found versus teaching in the US?
When I was teaching in the US, I was working in a very typical public school system. And teaching in Switzerland, I was basically teaching on the side of a mountain in it used to be a monastery. It was like very, very old fashioned, beautiful, inspiring, like the hills are alive with the sound of music kind of setting. There were cows and sheep around. It was really, really idyllic, totally different than the environment I've been teaching in Boston. And of course, depending on where you go, you could be in the middle of like a mega city. So I'm not saying that all international teaching is this, but I did not spend a single cent of my own money on teaching materials as an educator in an international school. And if you're a public school teacher, you know that you are constantly outlaying your own money for supplies, for basic things in your classroom. So that was a revelation. I felt that I was more supported in having time to plan, in people saying yes to me about some of the ideas that I had about education. The students were really interesting. They came from all over the world. Most of them were really eager and excited to learn. And I had incredible relationship with colleagues. When I was working in a US public school, everybody was always so stressed and burned out that you didn't necessarily have time to make eye contact with your colleagues or have a coffee or have a chat about how things were going. My colleagues became some of my closest friends in Switzerland, which was a big difference for me. It really improved the quality of my life. So I definitely felt like I was more supported. I had more work-life balance. That being said, there were also really high expectations about buying into the school and the school culture that you don't necessarily have as a public school teacher in the US. For example, I went on a bunch of different really unusual field trips with the kids that I never would have done at home. So I was hiking up mountains with them, even though I'm an indoor kid. I am not sporty. I was hiking above the tree line with 8th graders in my first few months there, and thinking I was going to die because I was so out of shape and I couldn't handle it. And then, doing international field trips, which is incredibly fun, but also incredibly draining to be away from home, sleeping in a hostel bed and eating hostel food and, being woken up by the sounds of 50 12-year-olds screaming first thing in the morning. It's a real trip. It's a real roller coaster. It involves complete buy-in from you with your ability to get involved in the classroom and in the whole experience. But I also found it a really fun change of pace.
Lovely. Okay. All right. So yes, very much a different experience to teaching in the US. And just to make sure, you were teaching at an international school, is that right?
Yes, I taught at an international school.
Does that mean that all of the staff were international? You weren't the only non-Swiss person there?
Oh, no. Most of the staff is international. So they might come from really all over the world, although there were a ton of people there that I met from the UK, from Canada, from America, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand. So a lot of the English-speaking countries are highly represented, but not always. And the kids came from all over the place as well.
Fabulous. All right. But you are no longer in Switzerland. How many years were you in Switzerland for?
I was there for 4 years.
Wow. Okay. That's a good chunk of time.
Yeah.
And then after Switzerland, where did you move to and why?
So when I was living in Switzerland, I met a bunch of people who had ties to Scotland, particularly another teacher in my school who had lived in Edinburgh, and she was engaged to a Scottish guy. And she invited us all to her wedding in Scotland. And so me and a bunch of the other teachers went and had a little road trip around Scotland after the wedding. I fell in love with the country. And at the time, I knew that I was maybe ready for a little bit of a change. And one of the things that I wanted to do was go back to grad school. So after my weekend going to this wedding in Edinburgh and having an incredible time, I Googled, like grad school in Edinburgh just to kind of see what was out there. And I saw that there was a program there that was matching my interests. And I thought to myself, oh, wow, my life is about to completely change. You get the chills when your life is about to change again. I thought, oh my gosh, my life is about to change again. And that's how I ended up in Edinburgh.
Lovely. And can you help us with that pronunciation? Because I know a lot of people are like, Edinburgh. How do we pronounce the city that you're in Scotland again?
Okay, don't say Edinburgh. I don't have a Scottish accent, so I'm saying Edinburgh, but a Scottish person might be like there's this way that you say it that I think if you don't have a Scottish accent, you can't quite say it, but it's Edinburgh, it's Glasgow, not Glasgow. Any Scottish person who's listening to this, I'm sure you would have notes about the way that I say those two cities.
Hey, close enough. Hey, it's better than Edinburgh because
don't say that.
Don't say that. Okay, just wanted to clarify, educator audience here who maybe didn't know. Let's talk about your experience in Scotland then. So how long have you been in Scotland now?
I actually ended up back in the States for about 8 months during the pandemic, but give or take, I've been here like a little over 5 years now.
That is a long time. Tell us about your experience living in Scotland. And I guess if you plan to stay, have you found your place? Do you miss Switzerland?
Oh, those are all such good questions and complicated answers. So first of all, I love living in Scotland. I love living in Edinburgh. I came here for a degree thinking I was only going to stay here for a year. And I fell in love with it. I made friends. I fell in love with the city. I know, Seppi, you've discussed the concept of soul cities before. And Edinburgh is definitely a soul city for me. I love it here. I just feel like my soul fits in here. So there've also been a lot of challenges, though. As I said, I went home for a period of time during lockdown, but I came back in, I think, November of 2020. And the whole city was completely shut down because of COVID. I was living by myself. I was completely isolated from my colleagues. Everything was online on Zoom. And that was a really stressful, frightening time to be living anywhere in the world, but especially Edinburgh. We had one of the strictest, longest lockdowns in Europe, I think. So I weathered that storm here and then came out the other side of it now. Things started coming back to normal and I got to, socialize and see people more. Completed a degree here. I just completed my doctorate, done a lot of things that I wouldn't necessarily have gotten a chance to do if I had stayed on the career path that I've been on. That being said, living in the UK comes with a lot of challenges. Americans, we have this unbelievably romantic notion of what life in the United Kingdom is like. And a lot of us immediately want to move abroad because we feel that kinship. Maybe we grew up watching the BBC, where we've always been fascinated about there's another country where they speak English, but they sound a little different than we do. There's this really romantic notion around the British Isles, which I've fallen for as well. Shakespeare, Jane Austen, who wouldn't want to be here? But it can be an incredibly tough country to immigrate to and to stay in. And the visa paths that I found that I've been on are really too restrictive for me to have a long-term life here. Also, some of the employment opportunities, especially as an educator in a place like an international school, they're more varied, more interesting, and sort of more what I'm looking for than some of the educational employment opportunities that I would get in the UK. I can't say anything publicly yet, but I have had to be a little bit open-minded about what my next refresh is. And that was definitely a hard choice for me because I love Edinburgh. And in different circumstances, I could see myself staying here and never leaving. But because everybody needs a job, everybody needs to make money, and everybody needs to be working a job that they love and feel good about, I had to be a little bit more open-minded after I finished my degree about where I was going to go and what I was going to do. So watch this space. It could possibly take me away, maybe to a different country. I won't be going back to the States. But, these are tough decisions that we have to make when we are living on visas in foreign countries. Unfortunately, not every foreign country is viable to stay long-term for every person. So sometimes you do have to make some hard choices about where you're going to have the quality of life versus where feels most comfortable.
Totally. Yes. Well, thank you for sharing that too. I do want to touch on visas and the UK.
Yes.
Because quite a few people come to me saying, yes, I want to move abroad. I want to live in England. I want to live in the UK. And I'm like, well, maybe we should redirect that energy because the UK is actually, as Alyssa said, it's challenging in terms of visas. Yes, there are visas for people to move there, but I think they're quite limited. I think it's less viable for most people to get a visa in the UK, especially to stay long term?
I would say that's been my experience as well. And I have experienced a lot of people who came here wanting to stay who've had to leave. Because visas here, especially if you are on the student path, they can be very restrictive. It can also be very expensive. And for me, it was getting to the point where the amount of money that I bought in with visas and the education system was not equaling what I could get out of it professionally and economically. And when that starts to happen, you have to kind of take a hard look at what's going on. So when you come here as a student, you can get a student visa, which now they're up to cost about £1,000 per year of your program. I would say since I've been here in the last 5 years, I've paid about £5,000 into visa costs. But these visas do not add up to residency that leads to citizenship. So when you're here on a student visa, you're here on the 10-year path and not the 5-year path that you would be on for a highly skilled worker visa. There are visas that you can sort of piggyback off of when you are done with your studies, but the terms of these visas, they have changed every year since I have been living in the UK, and Brexit has been involved in all of that and sort of closed the UK off from the rest of Europe and the world a little bit more. And the thing about these visas that you can get on after you are done with your studies is those are not extendable either, and they do not count towards your residency. So you're essentially paying for another visa to be a job seeker, knowing that even if you do get a job, when that visa runs out, you are still going to have to get sponsored for a job by an employer, and that means a highly skilled visa. And those, of course, as we know, are the most competitive visas. There's other options. They do have artist visas, but these are for people who are really well established in the arts, which I'm not quite there yet. And then if you have any ancestry in the UK, I think that might be the most viable route. So you might want to look into that. The UKVI website will be your absolute encyclopedia, your Bible through this whole thing. I see a lot of bad quality information about moving to the UK on the internet. Look at the UKVI website because that will tell you the most up-to-date information about what you are and aren't allowed to do.
Definitely. Thank you for that. So yes, if you want to move to the UK, just know it's very, very hard. There are a lot of other options in Europe that are much more feasible for most people. Again, I would steer you that way, but do your due diligence. Check out the UK, check out their website, and you'll see all the information there. I do want to talk about any advice you have for teachers in the US or Canada who are listening or okay, I want to do what she did. I want to teach and I want to teach abroad in a school. What do you suggest they do? How can they get started?
Sure. There's lots of different resources out there that want to attract qualified English-speaking teachers to positions in international schools. Search Associates is the one that I've used as one of the largest and I think the most well-organized. Another website that you can use is called Schrola. Maybe we can put that in the notes. And then there's other ones, but I don't have personal experience with them.
We'll definitely drop those in the show notes.
The recruiting season for international teachers starts way earlier than the recruiting season for, let's say, US public school teachers. So to put in perspective, I had to make a decision that this was something that I was going to do maybe around October, because you have to start gathering your references to be uploaded to the website. It takes time for them to vet you, et cetera, et cetera. Then I maybe completed all the background checks and things like that by November, Thanksgiving time. And then the hiring season starts right about then. Notice periods for international schools are really strict. Some schools want an answer about whether you're returning the following year in November. The latest I've seen the notice period is maybe mid-December, although some schools are different. So around that mid-December time, jobs start to pop. And if you are already in the database, you can start applying to jobs as they come up. They also have these recruitment fairs that happen around the world I think they go from January to March. So you'll want to get in there to go to some of those fairs and see people in person. You're going to want to start with your resume and with your references, especially, are really important around, I would say, October, in order to line yourself up to be successful in the recruiting season. So I would say that for the most part, the season is probably already past this year. We're recording this in late January. It's not completely true. You can still look, but you might have sort of maybe less options than you would have if you'd started sooner. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that these recruitment organizations really want you to be kind of open-minded about where you go, so you have better success. I had no idea that I wanted to teach in Switzerland when I accepted the job there. I had sort of a vague notion that I'd been through there on the train before and thought it looked kind of nice. But if I had been really committed to working in one city, I want to work in Paris, I want to work in London, I want to work in, Istanbul or wherever, I might have ended up getting disappointed. So be open-minded. The third thing is that It's really normal for you as an educator to ask to speak to somebody at the school when you've got a job offer that is in a similar situation to you. So maybe another single woman or maybe another American woman, to talk to them a little bit about the position, what it feels like to live in the city you're moving, because you're probably about to move someplace you have never been to before. It's really normal for schools to give access to other teachers, and international teachers, we're like a little community. We love to help each other. We love meeting each other. We're very like social, kind of nosy people. So people at the school should want to talk to you. And if they don't, or if the school kind of hesitates to put you in touch, that might be a little bit of a red flag. Make sure you vet your contract and understand it, because these contracts are a lot more locked in than American teaching contracts. You may sign an initial contract that's good for 2 years, and then you might have a notice period. And if you break the terms of that contract, there might be financial penalties. So make sure you really understand that. Any good recruiter is not going to pressure you to sign a contract. They should give you some time to think it over, to read the contract through, and to make sure you understand everything.
Fabulous. Those are wonderful tips. All right, ladies, hopefully you're taking notes out there, all the educators who are listening. All right, so a few more things I want to touch on here. You had mentioned, yes, thank you for mentioning the soulmate city. Mine is Madrid, for y'all that don't know. I don't live in Madrid anymore. I live in Malaga. Miss Madrid very much, but I like, Alyssa, how you brought up, sometimes we just have to make decisions. I mean, like we said earlier, living abroad is life, right? Like sometimes we have to make certain decisions based on where our life is at the time. So right now my life is in Malaga, although maybe I'd rather be somewhere else in Spain. And maybe you'll stay in Scotland, maybe you won't, even though you love it there, but it's going to be dependent on work for you. I do want to talk about doubts, because I think sometimes people think like, I'm going to know for sure that I want to do this. And like, you're going to have so much clarity and be 100%, sure about everything when you're making this move. And I actually think that's not always the case. I think before you move, during your move, after your move, doubts can still come up about like doubting yourself if you're making the right decision, because yes. I know this happened to me and I know I'm not the only one out there. So I wanted to ask you about if you've ever had doubts along your journey before, during, after, and through your multiple moves.
Sure. Absolutely. Doubt is part of the game. Everybody wants to just sort of fall in love and make the leap. And that is sort of what it feels like in hindsight. But at the time, like a lot of angst can go into making these decisions. So I think it's really important to listen to yourself. If you're someone who journals, journal, make a pro and con list, put the Post-it notes on the wall, do what you need to do. Talk to people who are empathetic to you. So maybe if you've got someone in your life who you really love, but they're a little bit of a naysayer about moving to another country, maybe don't speak to them, but speak to someone you know is going to have your back and just has your best interest at heart. And in the end, I think really honestly, if your mind is going like, if you're having that gut reaction, like, no, this is bad, then listen to that. However, you are going to have doubt and anxiety. Now I'm sort of possibly facing my third refresh. I have maybe even more doubt and anxiety than I did the first time, because the first time I didn't really know what I was in for. I was like, sure, I'll move to a foreign country. I had no idea how challenging any of it was going to be. And since then I've survived a pandemic in a foreign country. So now I think I'm a lot more cautious about what I go in for. So it's important to have that like self-knowledge about, why am I doubting it? Am I doubting this opportunity? Are the terms of this contract not what I want them to be? Do I have unanswered questions about this place that I'm moving to? And then again, that's why a resource like She Hit Refresh is terrific, because you have women who are all over the world, and you can just ask. You can just ask other women who have done the thing. What was it like living in this place? And they'll give you honest answers and you'll get the feedback. And anxiety is par for the course. After I signed my first overseas contract, I had nightmares for like a week afterwards. And I was like, oh my God, what have I done? But the other deal that I make with myself is that, like, yes, you've signed a contract. Yes, you've started selling your stuff. You've given notice on your flat. But one thing I've always told myself that is, if I go somewhere and I hate it, I can go home, right? And I know that's not an option for everyone, and it's like a very privileged like place for me to be. However, if something is so bad that I don't feel safe, or if my heart is hurting every day, for whatever reason, it's maybe not as advertised, I have that little deal with myself where I'm like, worst comes to worst, I go home. And no, as an adult woman, it's really not like it's, it's not the most triumphant thing in the world to like, bring your suitcases home, but maybe it's not home for you. Maybe it's trying a different refresh, going to a different country. But really what you have to do is be your own best self advocate and have your own back. And be in that way really looking out for yourself, not in a suspicious way, but in a way where you put your own needs first, kind of leave those people-pleasing tendencies behind, and make sure that the situation is good for you.
Yes, yes, and yes. All right. Love so much of what you said there. Yeah, I think let's normalize the doubt. That's normal. This is a big life decision. Of course, you're going to have doubts because you're doing something you haven't done before. So there's a lot of unknown. And when there's unknown, our brain is trying to protect us because it doesn't know what to do because it's never been in that situation. So this is just like normal reactions of our brain and body, right?
Yes.
The doubt doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong, but I like how you said, like, really evaluate where that doubt is coming from or that anxiety. I think it's so important to talk to people who have done the thing that you want to do, like get advice from them. Like, yes, okay, if you want to talk to your friends and family, fine, who have never done it. But I mean, they don't know exactly, right, what it is to move abroad. So when you tap into women or a community or whomever who has done it, they're going to give you advice from a perspective of somebody who's been in your shoes before.
Yes.
And has succeeded and thrived in the thing you want to do. And I think that is very valuable information to take to heart when you're feeling like, am I making the right decision? I will also say, like, you can't know if it's the right decision. I get this question a lot. People asking, well, how do I know if I'm making the right decision? You don't. I mean, how could you know? The only way you know is to do it and find out, right? I mean, there really is no other way. This is life. Life comes with risks and rewards and decisions and choices. And so you just have to make the best decision that you can at the time with the information you have. So
you're absolutely right about that.
Right? There's no way to know. So I can't guarantee that your move abroad is going to be everything you hope for, but I'm telling you, I've been abroad now for almost 10 years, and all the women that I've met over here, who have made it work because they had a plan, they figured it out. I think their biggest regret is not having done it sooner.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel that way about international teaching all the time. I wish it was something I had done in my 20s. People are always saying, like, why don't you go to South America? Why don't you go to Asia? And now that I'm older, my parents are older too. And I really value being like a direct plane ride away from my family if anything ever happens. I didn't care about that when I was 20. Like I should have gone, like I should have gone to Cambodia. I should have gone to Vietnam. I should have gone to like Tokyo. But now I feel a little bit like that ship has passed a bit. So be bold with your changes. Like the worst thing that happens is you try something different. Doesn't work. You try something new.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that too, because it makes me think. Someone asked me recently, what advice would I give to my younger self? I would tell her, take more risks. And I took a lot. I was doing my thing. I was traveling. I was doing all the things I wanted to do. But looking back, I'm like, I should have done more. I should have gone to Asia when I was 22 and do backpacking by myself. I should have done all the things like that. So I love what you said. Yeah, take risks, people. This is our life.
Yeah.
And question here then, I think I know the answer then. Would you ever move back to the US?
No.
That was quick.
Sorry to my parents. Sorry to my family. I know they would be really happy if I moved back. No, I don't see the opportunities for the type of career that I want in the States. I don't love the quality of life in a lot of big American areas, not just because things are so expensive, but traffic, having to worry, like as an educator, having to worry about like gun violence in the classroom, and then some other things that we're dealing with politically right now. It's such an incredible weight off of my heart to work in a place where I don't have to worry about like active shooter drills. I can't imagine, I just can't imagine living in that situation again. So no, I wouldn't consider it. For the foreseeable future, I would say no. Things can change in a heartbeat. Like you don't know what the future brings, but right now, no.
Love it. Love it. All right. So we're getting to the end here, but I have two more questions. I guess, what advice would you have for women, or do you have for women over 30 who want to make that move abroad, but are feeling scared, nervous, hesitant, or like unsure if they can even do this?
take the first steps and start gathering information, because knowledge is power. And if you don't know what you can do and what the possibilities are, then you can't do it. If you feel overwhelmed, remember that just because you're gathering information and learning more about like visas and job options, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to like go make the leap tomorrow. Maybe you're making a strategic plan for, 3 months, 5 months, 6 months. I also think there's this myth that people who move abroad are super spontaneous, and people will say things to me like, oh, I wish I could be adventurous like you. I wish I could just like book a one-way ticket. And I'm like, girl, I have never done that. Every single move abroad that I have ever made has been the result of months of, I'm a Virgo. It's been the result of like months of strategic planning, of pro and cons list, of like, calling all of my friends and talking about it until like they're just like totally sick of me. So you don't have to be super spontaneous to move abroad. Knowledge is power. Start gathering the information. The other thing I will also say is build your community of women abroad. If you haven't done something before, you've got to find someone who's done the thing that you want to do. Fortunately, like She Hit Refresh is a resource for that. Also, there's just tons of expat groups out there and groups for expat women. And these will be your most valuable resources. So connect with other people who are living the life that you want to live. And then just remember that in the end, this is your life. You're the one who's designing it. And you make the call.
Love it. Thank you for the She Hit Refresh shout out. Yeah, for ladies out there, if this is your first time hearing about She Hit Refresh, we're all about helping women over 30 figure this out, educate you, inspire you, get you the resources you need. We have a Facebook group. You can join that for free. We have a masterclass that I run a few times a year, so you can check on the website when that's running next. And the lounge that Alyssa is a part of, where we're helping women who are actively working on their moves abroad. And now we have women in there who have moved abroad. They're there. So
yes.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. I'm sure there's going to be women out there listening who are like, oh my gosh, I want to follow her, connect with her. Where can people find you, Alyssa?
Okay, so my website is www.alyssaowrites.com. And I'm Alyssa O. Writes across social media. I'm on Instagram. I'm giving Blue Sky a try. You can search just Alyssa O. Writes and you'll find me.
Fabulous. And we'll drop all of that in the show notes. Alyssa, it has been such a pleasure. So thank you so much for sharing your journey, your advice, and your insights with us.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed this episode and leave feeling like a move abroad is even more possible for you. If you're happy with what you saw, I want to invite you to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and leave a question or comment because I would love to hear from you. If you're ready to take action on your dream to move abroad, be sure to grab my Visa Guide to Europe. It's your roadmap to over 50 viable visa options in 19 countries. You can grab the link below in the show notes. And don't forget to get on the wait list for my next Move Abroad After 30 Masterclass, a masterclass for women age 30 and up, which is a step-by-step training to help you fast-track your move abroad. And grab the link in the show notes as well. And last but not least, a huge shout out to our sponsor, International Living. Thank you so much for making this season possible. Until next time, ciao for now.